Your local capital. They transferred it.
Oh, yeah, it looked the same size, yeah.
So they knew they were doing it, but they didn't know it was there in the budget.
We're missing trustee robotics.
It's bladder.
I said, open the door. That's what I walk in with. Their bucket dropped and put a flag.
I'd like to call the meeting back to order again. Superintendent Blaine, if you want to pick up where you left off.
All right. So how are we going to do all that? How are we going to find the $950,000? And it does not come without great difficulty. And we understand that everyone is important in the system. But with using the guidelines that we talked about, the explanation we've used around it becoming sustainable, the guidelines that staff is suggesting around the use of contingencies and et cetera, we're looking for $950,000 within our system now. So given that, staff are suggesting that we divided it up into, we grouped our impact statements that hopefully it will suffice for the board, and we'll start with grounds and maintenance. As I said in the chart earlier on, grounds and maintenance had a significant restructuring last year, and there's only a few pieces that we're suggesting, and staff has come back to us and suggesting that there are 2 FTE in carpenters and 1.34 FTE in ground staff that we can work with around restructuring and also mitigating some of the circumstances and et cetera. So on this around the QP piece is that when and if the board makes a choice that affects a QP position, there will be what we call mitigation section 54 afterwards. And those are discussions to minimize the effect on the individuals as we move through. There may be other opportunities within our system that we can service work or not, and that's our first job, is to see and minimize the layoff piece. And HR will correct me if I stated in a little bit of a wrong way, but our job is to do that before we get to the piece. So, for example, taking into consideration retirements during the year would enter into our mitigation conversations and whether or not we can minimize the total effect on what's going on. But the bottom line for grounds and maintenance is that we suggest that there be 2 FTE of carpenters and 1.34 FTE of grounds. Now, what does that do out there? So one of the things that we experienced and gathered information on is that services shift and change out there. That's to be expected. And the services that are shifting and changing are that we need to be more involved in prioritizing what is happening out there and the work that we're doing. And these types of changes affect everyone, including teachers, in asking for boards being moved from one place in the room to the other, and what is important and what's not important. So what we need to do as an organization in year 2 is to begin to focus in on what are the priorities and how do people ask for the work to be done. And so grounds came back to us and said the priorities for ground is health and safety. So those would be the classification of outside classrooms and fields and the outside playgrounds and et cetera where students are. So that becomes a priority instead of trying to maintain all. For example, and I will use the Dufferin Crescent type position, we have fields in Dufferin Crescent. Those fields are not our classrooms because we don't have classes in Dufferin Crescent, so they would not be a priority. But the field at Ladysmith Secondary or NDSS or another school where the fields are the classrooms, those become priorities. So that's the outside classroom piece, the priority to work with the play structures and maintain those. Priority in addressing drainage, which can cause a lot of damage, so that would be a high priority. Lower priorities to all the other ground services and et cetera that are out there. And we will continue to work with efficiencies and try to grow those places that we're working Maintenance, the priority to building to health and safety.
Okay. Sorry to interrupt you, but we have a couple questions that have been pending.
Okay.
Trustee Brennan?
Yeah. This is to Mr. Sabo. Mr. Sabo, there was a position created several years ago that was different from what had existed, and I think it was called groundskeeper, wasn't it? And different level of training and expertise, qualifications.
Yes. Through the chair, yes, we did. We created classifications where we were hiring grounds tradesmen versus groundsmen without a trade certificate, and we have 2 grounds tradesmen on staff.
Okay. And with regard to the, we heard criticisms of the ND field because of the rabbits, and you provided the board with a report on the custodial services that had a rating scale, and we fit somewhere up in the middle, not too high, not too low, but adequate. Is there such a assessment model for playing fields that could be applied or used to determine what condition our play fields in? Because as I said last week, we keep hearing from the city of Nanaimo that they maintain their fields to a higher standard than ours. Well, what is the standard? Is there one?
Yeah, through the chair. Off the top of my head, I'm not aware of a rating standard for play fields that we've applied. I'm certain that there is. We would have to do a bit of research. We have done some preliminary rating of our fields by simply comparing them to the city of Nanaimo's standard of field. And while I can't speak specifically to the maintenance standard, I can speak to the different construction standards of the fields. Our fields are typically not constructed to the same standard as the city fields, i.e. we don't have significant amounts of sand fields, which are the higher end bed drain fields.
So,
Yeah, a couple more questions. Rob's here?
Yeah, it's based on the same thing. It says all sport fields will continue to be maintained, but what does that mean at what level? Because maintain, yeah, let the grass grow. I mean, like, is that maintained? I mean, open question, right? I would like to say, somebody would say they would have an area way to say a field needs to be 5 inches tall of grass, 3 inches tall of grass. It has to be something that formulates it.
The goal of the maintenance department is to continue to maintain the play fields to the same standard as they're currently. If I say anything, Mr. Hackwood, that I'm out of line. That's our goal.
That's our goal here.
Are there times when play fields aren't perfect for schools, and do we get complaints? Yes, we have for the last 20 years. And we go out and we adjust as we find them. Will we find issues in the future under this? Yes, we will. But the goal is to focus on the play fields, maintain that same standard. However, you won't see that same standard for boulevards and other areas in the district.
Trustee Solomon?
How many carpenters do we have in our district?
I believe that prior to 15-16, we had approximately 10
Of operational
carpenters, and that'll be 6 as of with these cuts.
And for the grounds people? Do you know the number?
Say the neighborhood, 12, but now it's reduced by 4. So we're down to about 8.
It's an interesting piece too, because we have AFG involved as well.
Trustee Riley?
Yeah.
So with that reduction in carpenters, will there be any additional contracted services?
Well, that's where it comes up to the conversations out there in the field and what the core services are. So the intent would be that the carpenters are continuing doing the work of the core services within the buildings, the cladding and all those types of things. And then when projects are developed, then they'll go through their mitigation pieces with the union to decipher whether or not we can have our forces do it or we need to go outside. So there may be opportunities there. I just wanted to make one comment about fields. And a long time ago in my history, a beautiful grass field was a great field to play on, right? But they have also gone by the way of there's not as many of them out there because they're difficult to upkeep. And are we shifting out of the opportunity to maintain all these grass fields, or do we need to look at it differently into an efficiency piece of what our fields look like, for example, secondary schools, where we're working in collaboration of building all-purpose fields. If you go and travel other school districts, you will see many all-purpose fields in many places because of the upkeep and et cetera. So those are the types of efficiencies we can use contingencies for in other places that also support the classroom, that maintain safe environments for kids, and also then be able to move efficiently the same people, the same workmen into different areas to another job. Just a thought, maybe to parking lot later.
Trustee Higginson?
The last line about lower priority to other ground services or requests which include gardens and PAC school initiatives, does that include the installation of playgrounds that PACs have fundraised for?
It would, if there are new playgrounds that are going in, there would have to be discussions on when we would be able to get to that. And that same discussion would be if we have the staff or expertise on it within our group, and whether or not if we would be looking at our staff doing it or not. And that's a decision that would be made from our staff and
Mr. Ball?
Some irony here, we're talking about grounds health and safety. I think many sports stars have had their careers shortened by playing on concrete surfaces with alternative grass.
We're not going to compare Empire Stadium in 1965 and the new AstroTurf that's out there, Mr. Hall. My niece can speak to it very, very clearly. That's why I'm sitting on this chair right now.
Well,
There's no irony.
It was fun though. Thanks. Okay, so we tried to put to compare it to instruction, and of course the difficult part is creating the priority of health and safety, et cetera, is directly supporting the core service of students. The continuous improvement of instruction and assessment, that's around assessment, and it's difficult, other than it does free up some costs or some funds for other ways. Under the enhanced facilities, the core services would include sports fields, and basically we're saying we focus in on the classroom and do what we can elsewhere, but become more focused for our people out there so that they can make those good decisions of what needs to be done and what doesn't.
Question by Mr. Bier.
Yeah, I do have one under the maintenance side for the, where it's about moving, and I'll say in the classrooms, request including, optional classroom modifications.
Yeah.
Our school district has a lot of asbestos within within walls. And WCB now has a guideline that before you drill a hole, you do testing. And what I fear is our inability to have qualified maintenance people go in there and assess the room and determine whether there may or may not be asbestos contained in the wall. A teacher, by no fault of their own, may take it upon themselves to pull something out or to change a blackboard and could expose that classroom to closure due to asbestos contamination. And I'm going to say that at this table because clearly that is a risk that can happen. And, how much will it cost of a few classrooms being shut down by no mistake of anybody because we're not able to do something? That expense would probably overwhelm the need to modify the classrooms appropriately through the right sources. That's why we hire trades.
When I started the conversation here, I talked about how we, the priority piece. That's about educating the field as well as what can be done and what can't be done. And we need to, as we move along, support our employees out there in the country, et cetera, and our teachers, not to be asking for those types of things. And we need in writing to get it out there. Here are the guidelines of what you can ask for and what you don't. And as any employee, is that they should be following the standards of what is set out by their supervisor. So agreed, it's difficult. Agreed that in past there's been some latitude around that. But is it a process that we need to move forward with anyway as far as what can be done in the classrooms and whatnot? I believe that we should be moving in that direction.
You have a follow-on? Or?
And that's the room mentioned for clarity. If indeed something went wrong there, what would be the outcome? We can say, yes, we need to educate somebody, but if a mistake is made, would the classroom be closed down, and how are we going to then be able to proceed on that happening. It's just, it's a reality question of saying, if it did happen, what would we do? Because we put ourselves, and that impact's not there, that we could leave ourselves at having to close classrooms if something inappropriately is done because somebody took it upon themselves for no other reason, because they couldn't get the job done.
That's a part of the risk management that our people are fully trained in, and et cetera. So I'm not disagreeing or agreeing, I'm just saying that that's part of the business that we're doing, and we have people that are in the system working, and there are staff members, and our staff members need to respond what supports the system. But I'm getting into the debate instead of moving forward with this. So if you could go to the next page for me.
Trustee Higginson has a question.
Just on this issue, and I apologize to prolong it, I know you want to move on. I had an understanding that at some point we did reports on which schools contained asbestos. Did we do that, or is that something that's coming down from the ministry, that there's going to be a requirement to, do we have reports on which schools contain asbestos?
Yes, we do. We have numerous reports on that have tested schools for asbestos. We have an asbestos management plan in place for every school, and we do annual asbestos inspections. And yes, as Mr. Severe has indicated, WorkSafe does change their standards from time to time, and we have to react and train our staff accordingly.
And we do due diligence to do that. Moving on to the next budget statement, impact statement. It's around operations. I spoke to it briefly in the sense that we talked about the cleanliness rating of 3.5 to 3.0 to 3.5 is somewhere within the area that we would like, and that's and our goal and our focus should be around 3.0. We're at, are we at the edge of a dip of the implementation plan, and the data will show that we do improvement, or are we the dip is going to continue? Only time will tell us that, and we're suggesting that we continue on this trend to see whether or not we can tweak it, to move it, to shape it, and the rest of the school district also. The transition of students and et cetera, that all settles so that we can get a good understanding of where students are. So there's several things that, for example, in the tweaking piece that we can accomplish, as we've gotten a little lazy on our classroom closure process that staff does. Extra classrooms in schools that we've closed in the past and locked them so that they're not clean. And so there are things that we can do there. We've got some initiatives around looking at reducing portables and things like that through technology and elementary school labs and things like that. So there's some opportunities there, and then along with some of the monies that are created around efficiencies on supplying the right tools to our custodians to get the jobs done, such as the scrubbers and things like that, that the board put money forward to part of the way through the year. So we, as staff, continue to suggest that we work with this initiative and monitor it very closely. We have good communication with our custodians around vehicles for them to have input in, et cetera. We met with them again today, and we reiterated that if this happens, here's what we're suggesting, just to be upfront with them. We also need to work with our teachers and classroom people and principals as to what is the priority system that we're using, what are the priorities that the do's and don'ts. You know, what can we do that we need to focus on to support both the cleanliness of their school and the custodians getting their jobs done, because many of them get called out to do other things on the whim of, and it's always a valid whim of a principal, whim of a teacher, whim of something else. And so it's those things that sometimes within the system interfere in the ability for them to clean. So we're suggesting that we continue with it for one more year, collect the data, and return to the board at the end of the year and report out again. And at that time, if there's some shifts and changes, we will do that.
Mr. Zvera's got a question.
Yeah, maybe I could finish just this part of it, if that's all right. And Mr. Severe can meet with me at any time, and I can privately go over it with him, if you wish. I have no problem with that. The team model, we believe, creates greater flexibility as far as the district staff is concerned, and also support of the individuals that are out there. And there's lots of pieces that, that we feel that we can improve upon, and we feel that we need that opportunity. And we also feel the team model has greater potential to create a more efficient process in cleaner schools in the long run than the model we had in the past. I'll stop there for any questions.
Trustee Rowley?
How many custodians do we have now, and how many would we have if that change was made?
We have 50, hi, I'm Diana. We have 59.84 FTEs right now.
Okay, so we have almost 60.
Yeah.
Is that what I heard? Yeah.
Yeah, just.
And I believe the overall, by the end of the day of the 2-year plan, we suggested that there were 22 reductions, and we are suggesting at the end of the plan it's only 11, so it would be 50%.
Yeah.
So you're saying go from 59, reduce that by 11, or that?
No, that was where we started. It's 59 right now, so it's 5 less.
Yeah, it would end up being
54.
just under 55, 54.84.
Oh, just at 50, sorry, 50 what?
54.84.
0.84.
Yeah, FTEs.
Trustee Solomon?
Was Mount Benson part of our, did we do the custodial work for Mount Benson since it's been rented?
Sorry.
Mount Benson, did we do custodial work?
They were, like right now, it's their leases.
But do we do the custodial work? Do we have people going into the school?
Yeah, we have a fly crew that picks up, sometimes it's a half an hour a day, sometimes it's 1.5. Each lease has, I guess, a little bit of custodial cleaning done there.
So yes, it's specific to the lease, and they
Yeah.
ask us to do certain duties. Mr.
Yeah.
Sable might be able to help too.
That's right. To be higher level, the leasee pays us to perform the custodial duties.
Okay. The reason I was asking is because of two FTEs realized through school closures, but really we're only closing Woodbank. We're opening,
Square footage was reduced
So
in
what
the
else
rental
is here?
lease, yeah, so there's different
Okay.
efficiencies
Okay.
with the reciprocating lease.
Okay.
Correct, so Diana's had a look at the overall change in square footage, and so it's sort of to simplify it, if you looked at it in a couple of stages, 2 FTEs are shuffled out of the system because of change of space, because of space closure and opening. Essentially keeping the cleaning standards the same, you can lose 2 FTEs because of the closure. And then there's 3 FTEs that are reduced that would impact the cleaning technically, and that is Diane's done some analysis, and her plan behind the numbers is that we would see 5 runs increase and 4 runs be reorganized so that we could better balance the workload. So 9 of the 21 runs would be affected. So in a sense, over 10 or over half of the runs would be unaffected by these reductions. So they would remain the same service to schools for those runs.
Thank you.
So in speaking to the impact statements for the board's knowledge also, each one of these impact statements has a lot of data and information that our staff has done. We are not presenting them at this time, but when you have more questions after this and you want more, please feel that we can ask and we can present that as well as Mr. Sable started to talk about some of the more finite pieces. So in saying that, as the district settles from the school closures and amalgamations, there will be reductions in coverage. And as we close excess classes and portable usage, that was the piece I talked about. 2 FTE reduction in that. And this year's staff has maintained half of the $500,000. So if you do a calculation, a quick calculation, we left $500,000 in. Then we're reducing it, so really there's half of that left in there. But as a budgetary process, we did it that way for the sake of being able to see what the budget would look like. So a little bit complicated. $500,000 was left in addition. out of contingency last year. Then when we came to these decisions, these cuts, layoffs are based on, with the $500,000 in, so about half of it is still left in there when we get these.
Mr. Zver?
And I appreciate the superintendent's offer to speak to me, but it's the board that makes the decision, and that's why I wish for clarity, as this impact statement doesn't say what the conditions of the buildings would be when they're left. It reflects your goals, which is truly what you want, enhanced learning. But by enhancing the learning, what are you leaving behind? Those impact statements do not reflect that. And I thought when the clarity was, is we wanted to know what would be left when the reductions were done. And I looked on the grounds ones, the same thing. What would the grounds look if the grounds were being reduced? So that's what I look for the impact statements. And the clarity of the thing is that's not on these papers. I'm sorry to say, that is not here, and my decisions are not taken in consideration. You guys can listen to what I say, you make the decisions, and I don't need to meet with Mr. Blaine in a closed room to understand these. Thank you.
So moving on to the busing, we're ready to courtesy. Okay. So, as the board is aware, we've been having quite a bit of dialogue and conversation around transportation. And I requested staff to take a look at the policy as it exists today and the opportunities for efficiencies, and et cetera. One point I just want to make to the board is that this policy has been in existence from 1986. I suggest to the board that sometimes we term it as seepage, and some different changes that have been made, and there's been so many different pieces made for all the right reasons at the time, and it's just been additional pieces always added to it. So the board is entertaining looking at the policy and piece to it as we go through that, and the board and staff has looked at how we can look at the administrative procedure and apply it in a way that we can do some effective efficiencies. We examined the guidelines, the routes, the potential efficiencies, courtesy riders, travel assistance, distance, geographical location, history of routes, number of rides, number of duplicated routes, including ones that the regional district was maintaining. And for detailed information, there is an appendix in this document around the specific routes, but I'm not going to speak to that right at the moment. I think the board should take your time, get a look at it, and go through that. So some of the impacts we thought, by the board following policy and procedure, it does create consistency around parents and families knowing where they fit within the consistency. When we create anomalies within the policy to rectify or to do certain things around a feeling of need for having students transported because of a school closure or something, it begins to send a message, and it may be a message that we wish, is that we're listening, of course, to the public, but at the same time, it is affecting our bottom line in our budget, and sometimes we don't calculate that in anticipation of that bottom line never changing, and so there's never an opportunity to push the reset button to go back to where we were in the past. Also, I would suggest that since 1986, travel patterns, parent transportation of students, and all those types of things have shifted, and so availability for vehicles and students having their licenses in high school, all those types of things, and it's a good opportunity for us, as we've spoken about, is checking the reset button. Maintaining transportation for special needs students was, and in unique geographic locations. I can use an example of one of the priorities that we looked at was the unique geographic location of Gabriel students and DSLs. And special needs certainly ranked up there as we had these conversations. And I'm going to, and reference something, educating all students with healthy lifestyles and safe transporting of oneself in an active transportation plan. As we work through this, we suggest, whether or not we do some of these changes or not, that we begin an educational program for our elementary and secondary students about what is active health in the way that they transport themselves back and forth to school. There's a sample of a program that I've been working on with some of the community members that has an appendix, Appendix E, and I'll leave that to you to take a look at. And as we move along here, Learning Services is looking at that as a very, very important piece to how to educate families and students on how to move from one place to another in a safe manner within this community, and involving many of the community people around that, and creating community action plans around what makes this a safe community. I suggest that not all of the safety responsibilities out there that we hear from parents are our responsibility. They're not. Sidewalks and et cetera are a consideration that we need to work actively with the city, et cetera, to try to support to get those things done. But there are certainly areas within our community, as we are going to define in the new policy, around issues around geographical location, urban versus rural, and those types of things that we do need to identify. The development of an active transportation plan for all students and families, efficiencies and funds will be redirected. The student learning department is interested in, as I said, developing that and beginning that process.
So I think we have a question from Mr. Zveer. So I want to remind everyone at the table, we're here to get information and to ask questions and not enter debate.
Well, it is a question, because in the impact statement, it doesn't say how many riders, how many students may be affected if the transportation routes are changed or adopted. And if we lost a percentage of those students because parents shifted to go to another school or decided to go to another district in the sense, ridership usually, if students aren't getting there, may or may not show up at our doorstep. And
Sorry, I just want to have a point of order. That information actually is in here. The number of students affected is in the appendix.
But
the information is in here.
No, but the amount of students may be lost, because when you
the number of
reduce
students
it, you may
impacted
lose
here.
students that won't come to school because they don't have a bus provided for them. They won't walk, so they won't come. And how many students would it take to fund that savings? Is not that great of a number. It's about 40 students would almost make up the savings.
So moving
Just
on.
with respect to Mr. Zwerg, it is time to ask questions. And I know he's representing his membership very well here, but we want to get through this so we can go home and read the appendix, read it all thoroughly, and then come back and then pepper staff with questions.
And I'd like to also remind staff that there were 2 reports that staff has that information, and you can compare and pull that out of your books that you have around transportation. So, and I think that, and I recommend that we do, and that was the intent of this meeting. So thank you for that. So under staffing impacts, you'll see that there's a savings of 3.8, under the changes that we're recommending, 3.82 FTE in the routes. 0.63 in incremental changes in other routes. 7.1, there was a contingency over there in case of emergent, et cetera. And that's not all of it. And a 0.6, because we're reducing in our services in our fleet, a mechanic, or I believe there's a part-time mechanic over there. And so that adds up to $409,000. And as I said, in the appendix, it's a breakdown of the routes that we're talking about. And there's also some very, very good data reports that have been presented to the board over the last 2 months.
Trustee Higginson has a question.
I see the direct cost savings, but there was also, as I scanned ahead, there was talk in some of them about providing transportation assistance to some families that would be affected. Has that
Yes.
cost been included?
I believe it's been included, so there's a plus or minus that has been given out, and that's the complete
The total savings.
included. Yeah.
Thank you.
So Secretary Treasurer has pointed out that the numbers apparently in the salaries and benefit column don't add up to the total at the bottom. Provide clarification. Which,
The total FTE is correct, and the total savings of $409,000 is correct. We'll update that and give you an update.
Salaries and benefits.
So we'll correct that.
so what the total of salaries and benefits is incorrect, and the total of services and supplies is incorrect?
I know the end number is correct. We'll
We'll figure out what
Yeah.
okay.
The end number is the right one.
Thank you.
yeah.
Okay, moving along, if that's all right.
Yeah.
To learning services. So at Learning Services has 5 initiatives that we're going to talk about. And so the first one, we spent some time on secondary class size. And that's at a cost, and you'll see that on the impact statement, it's at a cost of approximately $620,000, $30,000. And the reduction, and I'll get that correction out as far as the exact reduction in class size. As the board is aware, the assessment, we have 2 assessment coordinators driving the continuous improvements of students in assessment, and very, very successfully, and the implementation is, out there is very strong and positive. Next year is another big year around this, and they will be maintaining the primary assessment program, and also then expanding all the way across into intermediate and grade 8 and 9, and also maintaining how do we direct instruction, how do we support instruction around that, and implement those types of things. So Learning Services is suggesting we increase the 0.2 to each of those people, so it's a total increase of 0.4. And they're willing to take that out of their set-aside budget as we speak. So they're shifting their own. These next pieces are all shifting within Learning Services, but they wanted you to know that these are efficiencies that they feel would advance the learning initiative. The increase of inquiry and innovation, those are our I&I teachers. When we developed that this last year, very, very positive, a 0.1 in every school, supporting instructional strategy and learning around inquiry base. And last year we did not, because of funds, we did not put them in our focus schools, and the learning home was not there. And our rationale around a focus school was we had some other types of staffing in there in a bigger picture, and felt that we could get by with that. They're suggesting that we do it all the way across the board, we finish it off, which would cost us a half an FTE, 0.5 FTE. That would be an I&I person specialist in all 4 of our focus schools and the new learning home facility. And again, they're willing to redistribute some of their funds, and under the BC Ed grant, we're going to be looking at that from the superintendent's level as well to support that.
Trustee Ratley has a question.
So you said there was 2 assessment coordinators. The I&I teachers are going to be increased by 0.5 FTE. How many is there?
Across the district.
That will be distributed to a 0.1 to each school.
So 0.1
5.
to each focus school, or every school in the district?
Every school has them except the 4 focus schools. So we have 24, 25 of them right now.
So do you know what the FTE is on that
Each
total?
one of-
No. Like, what is that
2.9.
total? Sorry?
Total, 2.9.
So 2.9 FTE.
Every elementary school will have a 0.1.
So, I'm just asking for the total.
That
So
is the total.
So 2.9
That's
plus
what I
0.5.
No. It's
2.9.
2.4 right now,
And it will
and
go
it will
up
be
to
2.9, I think is,
So 2.4 to 2.9. Okay.
yep.
Ms. McKay?
We have 2 intermediate schools, and I'm just wondering if they will have the I&I next year, because I do
I
not
understand that
believe
they
they
were
have it this year.
included, every
So
school.
then it would perhaps be
Including-
more than 0.5,
Or Wood Bank and from NCI.
because the primary schools had them, but not the intermediates, so.
My understanding is this will complete the project, so,
We have one in the intermediate school next year.
okay.
And I, sorry,
Yeah.
I just want
Trustee
to make
Wood?
sure I'm clear. So the 0.4 for the assessment coordinator
And the .5 for the I&I coordinator addition, the money for that, that's not new money, that's money moved around?
Yeah, under learning services, they have a pot of money for the prize assessment.
Right.
And we've used it in different ways, and they're suggesting the biggest bang for our buck is to increase our assessment coordinators, get out and work with students as compared to something else. So they prioritize that. So it's coming out of what they would normally spend on assessment in different ways.
Okay. Cutting that.
So the next piece is the active transportation program. There is an appendix there. I would love feedback, input from the board as to what they think about it when they get a chance to read it. We're suggesting that this is a program that we may be very interested in on its own, but also under the times when we are making lots of shifts and changes with parents and with students and with potential shifts and changes, that would also be a conduit of discussion for families and education. And that again will be coming out of learning services.
So I have a question with respect to this. So under 6 it says costs and there's 4 little X's. So is this?
We're still under development. It will be, next year will be the beginning of, we need to write it, we need to do some different pieces to it. So I'm not sure what the cost will be next year. We're just starting to float it. It'll be a curriculum development piece that we'll have.
So it'll be ongoing cost.
But learning services is one to look at.
Okay.
The eventual pieces, it would be kind of a piece of, within the school, they're presenting a unit on this, and it's scope and sequence for the grade that we feel that most influence should be. Stranger danger may be part of it, active health and healthy activity may be another part of it, and then biking and transportation of oneself in local communities could be another.
Yeah, just as a point of information, at the AGM for the BCSTA, there was a motion passed on the floor to write a letter, as most were, but recognizing to the ministry to get the coordinated efforts for all the different entities that are involved in this, right? Because you got highways and you have municipalities, you've got schools. It's such a pile of red tape to move this stuff.
The conversation around this is actually the beginning of that, bringing PAC in, bringing other groups in, the active health groups out there in the community, and bike clubs and all those types of things. The last one, the board requested that the superintendent begin some conversation around the sexual health program at the elementary level that PACs are involved in. I've had 2 or 3 meetings around that, and we would like to move forward with that again. We would not be ready to present it in any way for another 6 months to a year. We would be working on it next year to do it. The goal is not only to educate the students, but to remove the burden of the PAC financing a major portion of that. And so PAC can use their monies to something else that's not basically curriculum based. Because active health, there's a lot of outcomes within the curriculum, existing curriculum that reside there. So it's a little bit of a gray area for us, and this has been an issue, as the board is aware, for several years here. And the PACs do an incredible job in working with the schools to offer these programs and support teachers. But we would like to move forward. We've had a conversation with the NDTA, and I've had a couple other conversations around it. Again, to get this off the ground, Learning Services is going to their accounts to begin those conversations, et cetera. I'm imagining that that one will be probably for next year at $10,000. They're small amounts, but I think it's important for the board to know that Learning Services is continually moving forward in that. So on the chart sheet on the back, you'll see the $616,000 for secondary class size moved all the way over to the right, and that's the total on the bottom. You will also see some quotes and pieces around some of the monies that we think, and we've tagged those pieces around learning services. The active transportation one, we're taking over a year to get a quality program put together with some support and consulting would be about $20,000. And the sexual health program, That was a number that was looking at probably a high number right at the moment. But in case we were to hire a teacher leader, that would be approximately about a 0.6. But it's a number that Learning Services was interested in to support. And so we put it in there, and it's still coming out of Learning Services.
Charlene, did you have a question?
Not anymore, thank you.
And so that finishes the bottom of that. So we have another impact statement that will be coming to you right after I finish this report, and that was by request of the board that we'll get to just in a moment. So in conclusion for this report, and thank you for listening, giving me all this time. The district has faced many difficult financial years. During the 14-15 school year, the board embarked on an aggressive plan of becoming sustainable. The success and work performed last year has been reflected in the 2016-17 budget, and I would like to say in a positive way. Staff believe that we can move to financial stability without significant cuts to the system, and most importantly, the classroom for 2016-17. We have balanced the multiple interests of all the stakeholders with the need to maintain balanced budget under the School Act. The building and maintaining a sustainable school district for years to come involves making some very difficult choices and decisions in an environment in which funding does not keep up to inflation. In 2016-17 budget sets the baseline for the Nanaimo School District to begin to focus on the trends of growth and to learn how to enhance student learning while maintaining a financially stable and sustainable education system for the long term. So I will conclude with that as we set up for the next impact statement.
You want me to hand out the
Sure.
the other stuff first, or the impact?
Let's do the impact statement, and then we have some handouts from the board. The board asked for this year's budget, the line items, et cetera, for the binder. That will come out as well. So what Graham is, just grab one for me there. What Graham is handing out is an impact statement requested by the board. So the reason we're doing it this way is not only the visual, but also the action. This is not an impact statement that is in the budget. The impact statements that we talked about, the balance of budget in the previous, was all included. Okay? This is a request of understanding the cost of the Cedar catchment to LSS and John Barsby on a yearly cost. So first off, a yearly cost, when you embark into transporting those students, there's a 4 or 5 year history of those students being in that school. So grade 8s will turn into grade 9, it's a 4-year, grade 8s turn into grade 9s until 9s to 10, 10s to 11. So if you're going to support those students in the first year, there is a premise that in the past that the board would support them grandfathered over a 4-year period. So this is supplying bus transportation for students to attend their previous high school of choice. They did show the John Barsby Ladysmith when the Cedar closure occurred. Some of the pieces that we pulled out, there is a potential of people looking at creating inequities around students from John in the catchments and to be affected by board decisions. So that's that piece about that I was talking about, that the consistency around policy. Students residing in Cedar currently attending John Barsby and Ladysmith could be able to continue to attend those schools. And conversely, it may affect enrollment at Cedar as Cedar opens as well. The Cedar area students may or may not have had transportation options to attend, that don't have that opportunity would have to attend their school with the continuation of bus services. That's a positive that they get to stay at their school around continuous improvement. So it's a question of environment for a student and their performance. Enhanced facilities for learning. The strategy works against the district's focus to become sustainable. The reason that we make that statement is that It would be an additional piece to this budget that the board would choose. And we would have to reallocate some money from within the budget as presented here, which is, upon the direction of the board, is things that we do. So on the back sheet, you will see that our best case projection would be about $119,000 to do this. It involves a 1.469 bus driver and incidentals besides that. There will be additional costs to supply bus service for the attendance of those students. District staff recommend eliminating bus service at the end of 2019-20. If you were to decide that takes into the 4-year piece. In order to provide transport, so it becomes a little more difficult to project, depending on what the board chooses in the recommendations of transportation in the budget, would depend on the number of new buses we may or may not need. Over a 4-year period, if we maintain the bus service as is right now and then added this, there would be a need to purchase new buses. So there's a capital cost to that, because our buses that are running right now, we're already running a couple of our replacement buses on some of the routes because of the additional routes of 25 and 26, which are the amazing as far as me.
Trustee Rowley has a question.
No, it's okay, he kind of answered it.
Okay.
I can come back to it.
And so that next paragraph talks about that a little bit. And the determined cost is assumed that more than 56 students will be attending Lady Smith Secondary and redistribution of students, etc. We did a short analysis on the number of students that are residing in the schools, Lady Smith and John Marsby as well. And I know Mr. Prevost is very well versed, and he's left. Oh, did he? You sent him home?
Yeah, probably.
Okay. He was here all the way from
Convenient.
now.
Just in time.
But we'll certainly bring more materials forward as you will and as you request. But we wanted to get some quick ideas of how much it would be for the board.
Trustee Higginson?
It says the cost of the bus is at $140,000. For some reason in my head, I had the buses being much more expensive than that. Has that changed? Or was I just remembering it incorrectly?
That was the cost of our last bus purchase.
Because they were estimated higher at one
Maybe we
point.
got, when we closed Cedar, to provide busing for these, very much higher.
Yeah.
Maybe we should double check that for you.
Okay, I remember them being much higher, 257 or something like that. Yeah, okay.
Ms. McKay?
Thank you. Looking at the impact statement about strategies on the back, and 56 students going to Lady Smith, do we know what the impact is for students that have shown that they would like to go to John Borsley? Just as a comparison on that number.
Well, we can only speak to the number of students that are presently at John Marsby.
Okay.
And the number of students that are registered at Cedar. Now, there may be students that are, if given busing, they may choose to go back, but they're registered at Cedar right now.
Okay. Thank you.
We haven't done any surveys or anything. We're waiting for that.
Yeah.
So, as we're here then, we have some more
So yeah,
information for you.
yeah. So that's sort of the
Just when you thought it was.
yeah,
Just when we thought we were done.
that's the narrative. Now here are the numbers, right?
Oh.
So take one, and Dale, maybe just put it on Appendix A. So let's look at the front piece. I want to try and put it all together for you so you can go home and understand what you're looking at. So Appendix A is kind of where, this is sort of the backup information where a lot of the numbers come from. So this is showing sort of the comparisons of the different amounts. So again, this is sort of a modified, consolidated, so the funds that we actually sort of have more discretion how we spend them. And so actually Appendix B. So Appendix B of your handout shows the operating fund, learning improvement, fringe programs. That shows the makeup of what makes up the amounts on Appendix A. So if you look at revenues for 16-17 on Appendix A for $126 million, it ties up to the revenue for the consolidated one on Appendix B. Okay, now to the handout.
Okay, that's why. So through the handout, I was like, I can't see where to talk.
Mr. Spears got a question on it.
Just on clarity, because I noticed, well, on the other, I guess, professionals, it's up by, I think it's $400 and some odd thousand. And I'm wondering what that increase would have been. I didn't see that in the makeup of the budget, but I see it in the line item that's there. And if they got a 4% wage increase, that might create $90,000, but I don't believe it would create $400,000. And what was the base mark for the teacher's salary? Because that's where I've always had a difference of opinion with Mr. Roberts.
We'll create a way.
And there was a 1.82% pension adjustment in there, and I don't know where that would be reflected in that number because it seems high. So
Yeah, I'm just going to how these numbers roll up. The actual numbers themselves, you can ask those at their time up.
well, how do I prepare a? Okay, whatever.
Okay, we can talk tomorrow. In all honesty, Rob, but for, okay, so now this one, the handout here, so you can see the total revenues is $126 million, which matches which is in Appendix A. And you see some additions at the bottom. So and if the facilities grant, other capital, then these are other sort of components of the budget to come up to the actual consolidated amount of $136 million. And that will tie into the end of this report. It's in my budget file. Okay, so that's how you get from the my budget printout to this document here. Okay, then further detail.
More. Where does this look at?
This is your budget backup stuff. Which one is in that?
This is super distributed.
Yeah, so
This is all the information we requested.
These are all the reports that we requested. We requested these separate things.
okay, so then I don't know what color this is. Purple. This is this gray one is consolidated, so everything grouped together. This other one is broken out into subgroups, and the subgroups are in each one.
You have one more of these?
Sure.
I have more.
So this is just the groupings that we use in my budget file, which provide a little more detail than the consolidated amounts.
Is this what I'm looking at?
Something coming out of your ears.
Dusty paper, is that it, Chris?
That is it.
Okay, so
The line by line.
if I could just finish up then. Request through the chair that questions from board members over the next week, if you would mind going through the chair of the business committee, and that'll help us in focusing on the questions that we need to answer, and we would definitely appreciate that. We will put together as much information as we can upon request. The other presidents and representatives of the different groups, please feel free to contact us directly as a representative of your associations, right? And so we're not dealing with all the everyone. Use you as the focus. And to the chair of the business committee, if you just email us after you've vented them. Just email them off to Graham and I both, and we'll get on that and work with the staff.
Sure.
So next week on Monday, is it Tuesday or Monday?
Tuesday.
Monday.
Monday.
25th.
25th.
Yeah. The agenda is we will be opportunity for debate. When we see the questions, if we feel that there's a particular impact statement that we need to expand upon, We may have staff present some of the documentation. If it's small questions, we'll just answer them as best we can at that time. I do believe there will be some presentations by both, by some of the partner groups, and also there'll be a final presentation by the superintendent again, just to wrap things up. And I'm anticipating Learning Services just to speak up to some of the initiatives that they have going. So that will be a full, wholesome opportunity for the board to debate and et cetera. And that concludes my report.
Trustee Higginson.
Just if, when trustees make this request through you to, and it might make your life easier, when trustees are sending questions to the chair of the business committee, that they send them to all of us, because then, one, we eliminate the overlap going to Scott, and two, we can see everybody else's questions, and it helps us sometimes form our own questions.
Yes.
And likewise, if stakeholders have questions, if they could CC me and I could include the trustees, because you may have questions in there.
Do you want them to go through you?
Not through, but just to be included.
CC.
Yeah, just so the trustees have I mean, you may be bringing up, relevant questions that.
Yeah, because for example, if Mr. Kay sends a question and it was the question I was going to send, no point in sending it twice.
Everyone, we'll answer everyone.
Sure. Trustee Berzovich?
No, it's okay.
That it?
That is it.
I want to thank staff for putting all of this together. It's a tremendous amount of work. I thought you guys did a really great job of elucidating all of the material. I think the trustees obviously have a decision to make, and much to cogitate over, and lots of numbers, and I'm sure lots of questions will come up. And speaking of questions, in the next portion of the meeting, we have questions. So first question here is by Emily Hopewell. If you intend to cut bus routes, will you ensure sidewalks and other safety procedures are in place before the cuts are made?
That's Route 3.
From staff's recommendation is, the simple answer is no. But we will continue to work on educating both the public and our partner groups and students.
Yeah, unfortunately, sidewalks are outside of the board purview. Okay, so here's a longer question, also from Emily. What is your plan for getting the 198 registered bus students, 54% of the school population, at Mountain View Elementary School, safely to and from school if busing is cut?
Good question, Trustee.
Given that there are, small print, no streetlights to make early visibility, no sidewalks or shoulders to keep students off busy roads, Jingle Pot Road, Holland Road, East Wellington Road, and the area is frequented by bears and cougars, resulting in multiple sightings encounters per school year. Walking is not a viable option. Furthermore, as there is no public transit in this area, that also isn't an option. Sure.
Well, just a point for the parents is that the documentation that's shared tonight will go online tonight. It's probably live already. And in the appendix, it goes through the Mountain View recommendations and et cetera, and you can have a read through that. And then if there's if there's some questions unanswered again, please feel free to, we'll set up a question form on our website, and you can include those questions there.
This looks like the same question. Yeah, same. So I'm sorry, the same question been answered. Again, there must be a contingency here for Mountain View School. Sarah, if busing for Mountain View School route is cut, since there are no safety alternatives for the 150 plus students who currently ride the bus, would you implement a fee for service bus, and would low-income students be eligible for subsidization? Thank you. Hey, some words I can do, and other words I cannot. Sure, go for it.
So again, that would be up to the board as we walk through this process, and if the board deems that they accept part or all of it, then the next steps would be to how to work that through. And the board would give us a direction of what they would like to see at that time.
And just to add clarity to some of these questions regarding busing, so there's currently sort of two processes that are under place. The first one's the budget, and we have an existing policy, and there's a recommendation for moving forward next year with our current policy. But we're also doing a transportation review, and the current policy is all based on distance from schools. And I don't know, there's something like 43% or some 40% of current riders that are outside of the policy. So we're in an underfunded public education system. We're trying to find ways to cut costs. And so one of the things that we're considering is looking at these subsidized riders.
If I could just point out one piece to the board, when we talk about 150 students, I think they're using the total eligible and ineligible rider numbers, which are in the appendix. I believe there are 50 students that are registered that are eligible in the Mountain View zone, spread over 3 different bus routes, just for your information.
Sure. And again, this is another question with respect to Mountain View. Bus Route 3 to Mountain View Elementary should not be eliminated. Children should not be expected to walk or bike along the main roads to our school. There are no sidewalks, not even a shoulder on some areas, very fast vehicles, sharp corners with poor visibility, no streetlights, and lastly, multiple bear and cougar sightings every year. It is not safe for the students to walk any distance on these roads. Training them as per the active transportation plan is not sufficient. And certainly we do, I mean, many of our areas are rural, and in fact, I live in one of those. So, you know, what you write here resonates very well with me, and I don't know the history for the Mountain View. I wasn't a trustee when they decided to grandfather in, so I don't know what the situation is, but rest assured that the trustees will review each of the bus routes on a case-by-case basis.
Well, I think just saying that children are ineligible because we live closer doesn't take into account the total lack of safety for the kids to be walking any distance at all. I mean, our kids can easily walk 4 kilometers on a sidewalk. All the people that are here, our kids are healthy and active. It's just that they can't walk on those roads. It's not safe. I'd like you guys to all go up there and try walking along that road and feel how safe you feel.
Well, and I think that sort of speaks to the fact that the current policy is all based on distance, which, and so there's some historical piece to that. So under the School Act, it's not up to the school district to provide transportation, any transportation to students. So there's that aspect of it. And then certainly there are a few school districts who have been trying to find ways to get extra money. They've cut busing completely. And I don't think we'll do that here, but that's just a point, more information for yourself. But certainly safety, I think, is a #1 consideration, not distance from somebody's house.
Purely safety.
With respect to transportation. So again, I don't think your words are lost on this board. Please consider not reducing or cutting the bus transportation to and from Mountain View School. There's very limited sidewalks and crosswalks along Jingle Pot Road and East Wellington Road. There are numerous bear sightings in and around the school. Again, same sort of thing. So I can't make any promises, but we're certainly going to take all of your concerns and considerations, especially with respect to safety, under consideration. And that concludes. We adjourn. Seconded. All those in favor?